Star Wars Jedi Knight II Jedi Outcast, first released on March 26, 2002, has long been proclaimed to be the Star Wars game with the best lightsaber combat, and this was back during Star Wars games' golden era. In our modern day, where Disney and EA's Battlefront 2's latest update completely breaks the already hit-and-miss saber combat mechanics there, it is with a mixture of praise and sadness alike that I can admit that this claim remains true. Outcast is more than just incredibly fun lightsaber combat both against lightsaber wielders and blaster-bearing enemies. It's also both a first and third-person action game with ranged combat and plenty of environmental puzzles and platforming. In fact, you don't even get to wield a lightsaber or the Force until a few missions into the game.
Those crystals you're holding are very much like those found in a Jedi's lightsaber.
Spast.
I was only 9 years old in 2002, but I remember reading in Nintendo Power magazine that the game had a bit of an admittedly slow start. The game does this on purpose in order to make the acquisition of the lightsaber and the wielding of the Force powers later feel more impactful, but it can also make the start of the game feel slow and plodding.
We'll send a message immediately.
Having played the re-release versions to about the halfway point now, I can say that this unfortunately remains true. This video is intended for gamers who might not have ever played this game before or haven't played it since 2002.
Thanks, I think I can find the way.
I won't clickbait you and claim that the game doesn't tell you some of these things, because it absolutely does. However, since this game is a digital re-release, and the well put together physical manual from back in the day can only be found if you still have an original copy from the 6th generation, this video will go over some starting tips for beginners to help you make it through the initial learning curve, and help you hang in there for the rest of the game, where things get a lot more interesting as your playground of mayhem expands with the addition of Force powers and lightsaber moves alike. Not that the ranged weapons are useless, far from it, each has a purpose and function, and there's a decent amount in here, but the shooting at the start can get repetitive after a while. So without further ado, here are 10 starting tips for the September 24th, 2019 Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4 ports of Raven Software and Vicarious Visions' Star Wars Jedi Knight II Jedi Outcast. Sensitivity. Don't be afraid to mess with the thumbstick sensitivity in the settings menu. On the morning of the PS4 and Switch re-release, I also played my GameCube copy, and noticed that the default sensitivity settings on the 2019 re-releases are set much higher than on the GameCube. The game initially felt way too sensitive and chaotic on the default settings, so after messing with them for a while, I ended up setting the sensitivity much further down on the PS4 and Switch versions. This made the already iffy platforming much easier to deal with, and my aiming vastly improved after I made this change. Something of note is that on the original Xbox and GameCube versions, the option to invert the Y-axis for the right thumbstick was there, and is now completely missing from this re-release on both the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. On the PS4, after about 2 hours of playtime, my console received an update for this game. A few on the Jedi Knight board on Reddit wondered if the update would add the option, but unfortunately, as of writing this on the evening of September the 24th, this is still a missing feature, although Aspyr Entertainment, who ported the game, have confirmed it will come in a future update. If this is an issue for you, then you might want to hold off until then. With this in mind, and your sensitivity settings tweaked to your liking, remember that blaster bolts in this game are not hit scan and do count as projectiles, so make sure to strafe and keep moving in combat. Lead your targets and make use of the leaning move to check new and unexplored corners so that you can get an idea about what you're dealing with, so that you don't end up in an embarrassing situation like a certain someone did. Manual saving. You do not want to rely on this game's autosaves. They're not terrible, but fostering a habit for saving manually might save you from having to lose 10 to 20 minutes of progress from time to time, especially since falling in this game or missing a jump can happen pretty often. And if you haven't even reached a checkpoint in the level, your only option would be to restart from the very beginning. Plus, the reassurance that you just saved before entering a room full of enemies can enhance how fun this game is, since you can have fun messing around with the combat to your heart's content, knowing that if you die, you just saved and you won't have to redo a lengthy stretch of the game. This can help you really make the most of the game's combat options, using all the various guns, lightsaber tricks, and force powers to the greatest effect, now that the stakes for failure are lowered somewhat by your good saving habits. There's a huge caveat to saving, however. At the time of writing, there is an issue on both the Switch and PS4 versions with the save files. I've run into it more often on the PS4, where even if you try to only have 2 save slots and you save over the previous ones every time, The game for some reason does not really overwrite them, it treats it like a new save every time. So eventually you're going to run out of space and the game will tell you that it is unable to create a new save. This can potentially cost you minutes of progress. Several users on Reddit have reported this issue, and it has happened to me over 4 times from the opening level to Nar Shaddaa, which is about a third of the game through. You'll have to go into settings, system storage, save data, Jedi Outcast, and manually delete your oldest saves from there. As of time of writing, there is no word of a fix for this, so keep up good saving habits. Familiarize yourself with the controls. At the start of the first mission, you'll appear on a landing pad behind a Lambda-class Imperial Remnant shuttle. Save here and take some time to familiarize yourself with the game's controls or change them up if you need to. Especially if you've never played an id Tech 3 engine game such as Quake 3 before, you don't really want to be asking how to pull out thermal detonators in the middle of a room full of enemies as you flounder with the controls and pull out your macro binoculars accidentally instead. Give yourself time to check out how the game plays before you advance further. The opening level is a decent tutorial, but due to this game being from a time when regenerating health was the exception and not the norm like today, I think it's a good idea to jump around the landing pad, memorizing the controls for a bit, so that you're not low on health for the first few encounters as you commit the controls to memory.
Well, that's one way to do it.
NPC Allies. Some recent games have given us companion characters that can assist the player at no risk or danger to their health. Elizabeth from Bioshock Infinite and Ellie from The Last of Us are popular examples. Not so in this game. Your allies do have a health bar and they can die if they take too much damage from enemies. If they die, you'll get a mission failure and you'll have to restart from another save, though hopefully you've been saving pretty often. Given the labyrinthine level design in most missions and the multi-step puzzles, it's always a good idea to save after you've done something important like getting a piece of a code or opening a previously locked door for the first time. If you're facing a particularly tough section with an ally character, keep an eye out for environmental hazards, such as exploding containers that can take out numerous enemies at a time. Set containers can also be useful for puzzle solving or finding a secret area, as they will sometimes be blocking a breakable grate or window. Secret areas. Even if you don't consider yourself much of an achievement hunter or completionist, it is still a good idea to seek out secret areas in Jedi Outcast. They will have goodies such as extra ammo, health packs, or other helpful items that can turn the tide during a tough section or after a long stretch of combat rooms. If you get lost, backtrack. There might be a key on an Imperial officer that you missed, and the old maxim of enemies being in the direction you should be going holds true here as well. Alternate fire. Most weapons in the game have an alternate fire mode that usually changes up the use of the weapon a decent amount. Thermal detonators typically used as a rolling throw with a delayed fuse. However, their alternate fire mode is a primed throw that makes them explode on impact. Particularly useful if you're ever swarmed by a squad of stormtroopers. The typical E11 goes from firing one sporadic semi-automatic blaster bolt into a spray and pray full automatic mode in its alternate fire configuration. As you find new guns as the game progresses, make sure to familiarize yourself with each new weapon's 2 modes of fire. It can be the difference between life and death in some parts of the game. Healing items. As I mentioned earlier, in 2002, games with healing kits were more common than they are now. You're going to have to keep a close eye on your health as you have a finite amount that until you acquire the force heal power, you can only regain health by touching the instant use medpacks on gray stations scattered throughout the levels, or by picking up and manually using the Bacta canisters in your inventory. You don't want to walk into a new firefight with only 2 points of health out of 100, trust me.
One less Republic scum.
Take it slow. Despite what the trailers may show, a lot of the moment-to-moment gameplay is a bit slower than you might imagine if you haven't played this game before. Especially in the first 2 levels, try not to run and gun your way through. You're more likely to get lost and turn around than not that way. Especially in the Imperial facilities where certain doors might look like part of the wall, or you have to press the one panel out of a wall of 10 that actually does something. Given the fact that the 2019 re-release is missing some context-sensitive icons at the time of writing, taking things slow might end up saving you more time in the long run than if you sprint through at first and end up lost and confused. There is no in-game map, so try to chart a mental one as you go. In the end, you're a mix of Obi-Wan and Han Solo exploring the Death Star and the New Hope, and it can be easy to lose a bunch of health by playing recklessly, especially on harder difficulties. As I continued to play the GameCube version and compared it to the Switch and PS4 re-releases, I couldn't help but find the 2019 versions a bit harder. I'm not sure if this is due to the GameCube's tight C-stick making headshots on enemies easier, but if this is your very first time trying this game, maybe set your difficulty to Pad 1. I found Jedi, the middle difficulty, just right, but Jedi Academy is one of my favorite games ever, and I've been playing Outcast every couple of years or so since it released in 2002, so I'm fairly familiar with the mechanics here. If you get frustrated on the normal difficulty, there's no shame in lowering it to Pad 1.
Trulies.
Better to experience the whole game more comfortably than grind your teeth for the first few missions and drop the game forever if you're that kind of person. Pay attention to the level design. If you're given a pack of trip mines in the level, it's probably a good idea to keep them in mind because there's likely to be a situation coming up in which they'll be useful. Make sure to loot all the dropped guns from enemies, as weapons except for the stun baton have limited ammo and you don't want to run out in the middle of a firefight. Cheats. Not the most noble of methods. Back in the day, there were plenty of cheats for this game, and there still are on the PC version especially. Aspire Entertainment, who ported this game, and have ported other Star Wars games such as KOTOR 1 and 2 before, sent out this tweet showing how to access the cheats menu in this re-release. If you're on PS4, this will lock trophies for the play session during which you enter the cheats, and you can spend some time in God mode or simply change the color of your lightsaber. If it makes the game more fun for you, then go for it. Have a blast. Datapad. Don't disregard your datapad. It will update as you go along through the game and has plenty of helpful information for you, such as detailed weapons and powers descriptions, as well as a list of objectives that can be invaluable during the trickier puzzle sections. In conclusion, stick with it. This certainly isn't a game for all audiences, and it does show its age at various moments throughout the whole experience. The impact of these moments will vary with each individual and might be more frustrating if you've never played this game before, but my advice is to be patient, stick with it. The game only gets more fun as you progress, and the story gets more interesting as more characters show up and interact. It's a fairly basic story, but it does the job. This is a solid Star Wars game, and the lightsaber combat has yet to be topped even 17 years later. For $10, it's really not a high-risk try if you want to check out or revisit a game from Star Wars games' golden era. Today, $10 might get you some in-game purchases, such as crystals in Disney and EA's Battlefront games. I'd recommend spending those $10 on this game instead.
It must have been my imagination.
With these tips in mind, and the Force as your ally, I hope you have a great time playing Jedi Knight II, Jedi Outcast. Whether it's your first time, or you just want to experience Kyle Katarn's adventure on a newer console, I sincerely hope you found something useful here. May the Force be with you, and have an excellent day.